We've got some visuals for you, visuals of Oscar's defense team arriving this morning a little earlier on. And there's Barry Rue and Kenny Aldridge, not marching, looking quite relaxed. They all look quite relaxed actually as they walk into court, especially very early on in the morning, sharing a little bit of banter there, getting ready for what is day 2 of their side of the entire story. So we can tell you that we are joined in studio this morning by former Zimbabwean High Court Judge Chris Greenland. Chris, earlier we were talking about judges and what it's like being a judge. Now, what about the oath a judges take? We forget that.
Yes, I think it's quite important that everybody learns, if they don't know this, that when a judge is appointed, the judge takes an oath in terms of which the judge swears to discharge his or her duties without fear, favor or prejudice. So Judge Matsipa in this case will always be imbued with this culture, with this philosophy. She never forgets it. And we should understand that as a black woman, having been brought up in South Africa, she understands fear, she understands favor and prejudice. But she has to leave all that out of the equation. She has to disabuse her mind of it. And she has to look at the contestants in this trial in a colorblind way as equals. She is Lady Justice, and she's blindfolded to difference. And that's very important for us to understand.
And what we're seeing now on television as the trial unfolds, Chris, would you say that that's an accurate depiction of how it works in reality?
Yes, and perhaps a little no, because we already know that the issue of difference, for instance, if we take the question of the publication of the victim's injuries here, we know that a bad difference was thrown up when compared with the case of Annalene Boyson. And I've said this before, that one of the good things about carte blanche expose of our system of justice is that these, perhaps shall I say, imperfections are being thrown up as this trial progresses.
I completely agree with you on that issue, because I covered Annalene Boyson and what happened to her during that time, and the graphic detail. Her family and friends had to listen to that. They didn't really have anybody standing up for them and saying, not on.
And there can be no doubt that the only reason why the issue of her dignity, her family's dignity and embarrassment never arose was because of her very poor socio-economic status. Whereas in this case, the converse has become manifest.
Chris, let's go back now to Oscar's testimony yesterday. Let's return to the boating accident. He admitted that he had been drinking, but wasn't drunk. That seemed like a big admission.
Well, what struck me, and I mentioned this yesterday, about his recounting of that incident, was that we heard the whole story except with one important omission. We don't know how fast his boat was traveling, we don't know who was driving it, and we don't know what it hit. In other words, there was what I call a delicious omission on the part of Oscar as regards any involvement or any accountability for this accident on his part.
You call it a delicious omission?
Yes, it's an expression that I internalized when I was still a judge, and it's the way we would talk about it in judgments and to counsel. In other words, it's just too pat, it's just too convenient that that's the one thing that's omitted. So when we look at the story about the boat, we don't know whether Oscar was responsible for this to wholly or partially. He's left that out. And Devi, we must remember that it is an issue. His propensity not to be accountable, the state has put in issue. And that is why they've laid this evidence about him getting someone else to take responsibility for that accidental shooting in the restaurant.
Then the defense went on to Oscar Pistorius' experience as a target of crime. To me, it felt like a lot went on in his life. He was being targeted a fair amount, but surely the state is going to challenge every single example Oscar has put forward.
Yeah, my own impression, and at this stage it's only an impression. In other words, I'm pretending that I'm Judge Masipa. I thought that evidence was good. I thought it was convincing. I thought that it was true. And I thought that it did affect him as a human being. I am biased in that respect because I too have been the target of crime. I had a shootout in my house. It's just by the grace of God that I'm still alive today. My wife was hijacked at her gate. So I also I can empathize with what Oscar was saying. So I think that as a general proposition, we can accept that he's being sincere and genuine about that. As to whether or not that in any way mitigates his actions on the night in question is what we might call the $64,000 question here. And there'll be argument about that.
How much longer do you think Oscar is going to be on the stand? In terms of evidence of chief alone, just that.
I would expect Barry Rue to have him in there for at least a day, or the better part of a day. And I would then expect him to be cross-examined. Assuming I was cross-examining him, I think I would be finished with him in half a day to three-quarters of a day. But I'm not hearing now. Of what I've heard, Oscar might well be in a torture chamber for 4 days.
But as you see it, you would, I mean, if you were Barry Rue, you would keep Oscar on the stand for most of today and then let cross-examination hopefully start tomorrow. From a tactical point of view?
Well, I don't think he has any option. Oscar has to give his story. There's a limit to how long you can make the story. The events leading and involving Riva Steenkamp's death are tragic but short and bitter. So Oscar can't talk about that long. I think the cross-examination will be much longer than the examination in chief.
Chris, thanks very much for that for now. Former Zimbabwean High Court Judge Chris Greenland will be back with us in the next hour.